What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Paddock, and today we are going to talk about chord extensions from the perspective of a single note player. Chord extensions are one of the most difficult parts to figure out when it comes to reading chord symbols, and the reason for that is different instruments have different roles when it comes to chord extensions. If you are a piano player or a guitar player, you look at them completely different than saxophone players or trumpet players. And the reason for that is piano players and guitar players can play more than one note at a time. So they are thinking them as a cluster, as several notes together. When saxophone players or trumpet players or any single note instrument look at chord extensions, we see them in a linear fashion, meaning one note at a time, and most of the time thinking about them going up in order, like 1, 3, 5, 7, and then adding the extensions from there. So I am going to do this video in the perspective of a single note player, because everything I have seen on YouTube is all taught by piano players and guitar players talking about the notes as if they are all being played at the same time. And we do not play them all at the same time, and we look at these chords very, very, very different. So what are chord extensions? The idea is actually pretty easy to figure out. They are just extending your regular chord. When we think of a chord, we think 1, 3, 5, and 7. When we do the extensions, we add 9, 11, and 13. Now you might be saying to yourself, we only have 7 different notes in a scale, so how are we going to 9, 11, and 13? The answer to that is we just play the scale in thirds. So if we play our first, then we play our 3, we go up to the 3rd note of the major scale. Then we play our 5, we go up to the 5th note of the major scale. Then we go up to the 7, we play the 7th note of the major scale. Then we go to the 9th. So the 9th would be the next 3rd. So we are on a B in the key of C. So we're on a B for a 7th. It would go B, C, and then D would be your 9th. So your 9th is also your 2nd, but it's just stacked on top of the scale. Then your 11th would be a 3rd up from there, which would be F. And then your 13th would be a 3rd up from there, which would be an A. So when you hear it all together, you're basically just playing diatonic thirds. Diatonic meaning the notes in the major scale, and thirds meaning you're playing the interval of a third. Sometimes it'll be a major third, sometimes it'll be a minor third, depending on where it is in the scale. But you are playing diatonic thirds over the range of the scale. So it goes 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, which is also 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6. So your 9 is your 2, your 11 is your 4, and your 13 is your 6. So if you think of it, it's just playing a major scale by the interval of a third. Now, why does it stop at 13? Because once we hit 13, the next third up is a C. So we're back to 1. So we go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, back to 1. So when you're playing these chord extensions, you're playing 1, 3, 5, 7, then the 9 is your 2nd, again, the 11 is your 4th, and the 13th is your 6th. So that is all of the notes in your scale. Your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they're all played. You're all playing them in a chord fashion. So you're playing them in thirds over the range of the scale. So the concept behind chord extensions is actually pretty easy. But there are all kinds of little rules and like what should you do and when should you play it and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper and talk about that. When you have chord extensions, there are 3 parts to the chord. So if we have a C major 7 plus 9, that means the C is telling you that you are in the key of C, so everything is based on your C scale. The major 7 is telling you the quality of the chord. So it's got a major 3rd and a major 7th. And then we have the plus 9, that is telling us to add the 9. Now, it can be a little frustrating because there are all different kinds of ways to write this. So you could also see C major 9, and that is also telling you that it's a major 3rd and a major 7th, and you're adding the 9th. Or you can see C major 7, 9, You're not always going to see the plus sign there. Again, it's very informal the way it works. Again, the way you see the chord symbol written is all going to come down to what the composer prefers. So there isn't a real standard. But the more you see them, the easier it is to figure out what they're talking about. So what you want to think as someone who already knows how to read regular chord symbols, some chord symbols that go up to the 7th, is that you are playing the regular chord symbol that goes up to the 7th, and then anything you see after that, you're adding on to that. So if you see C7 plus 9, that means play a C7 chord, which would be C, E, G, B flat, and add your 9. If you see C9, they are telling you that the 7th is a dominant 7th, so it'd be a flat 7th. So because they're just adding the 9 there instead of the 7. So whatever extension is added to the chord comes after you play the regular chord. Now we have 9s, 11s, and 13s. So how do you know when to play what? If you see a 9th, obviously you go up to the 9th. If you see an 11th, should you just jump to the 11th or do you add the 9th? The answer is whatever the top number is, you add all the thirds before that. So if you have an 11th, the 9th is also there. If you have a 13th, the 9th and the 11th and the 13th are all there. So they just keep extending the chord. Again, that's why they're called chord extensions, because they extend it. So if you see C11, the 9th is implied. Now, there also are alterations to the chord extensions, and those are called alter chords. That is for a different video, but you will see something like C minor 7 flat 9. All that is telling you to do is lower the 9th by a half step. Now there's all these rules that come with the altered chords because you have to think about the notes that are before them and after them. Like for example, if you had a C minor 7 sharp 9, your sharp 9 is the same note as your minor third. So you're never going to see a C minor 7 sharp 9 because you already had that note in there. So when it comes to reading those alter chords, you really need to know all the notes around it to make it work. But again, that is for another video. Today, I just want to go into what an extended chord is and how to play over them. So now we've talked about what they are. It's basically just extending the chord by a third each time, and your second becomes your 9th, your 4th becomes your 11th, and your 6th becomes your 13th. So how do we play over them? This is the most confusing part when it comes to saxophone players and trumpet players, as opposed to a chordal instrument like a piano or a guitar player. The function of these chords is normally just to add flavor to a regular chord. So if you have a C major 7 chord and you just want to make it sound a little bit like have a little bit more flavor to it, have a little bit more substance to it, you're going to add a 9th to it. So you would, instead of just playing C, E, G, B, you would play C, E, G, B, D. That's it. But as single note players, we're already playing all of those notes. So we're not really adding the spice to it by adding the chord extensions. Chances are we're already playing the 9th in our solos, even if it's not listed in the chord symbol. Now, what makes this even more confusing is when a chord player sees C major 7th plus 9, they don't always play C, E, G, B and put a 9th on top. If they do that, that is called an open chord. An open chord, all that means is that you're playing the notes in order. So that they're going 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Most of the time, they are going to play it as a closed chord. And a closed chord means that they put the notes closer together. So they might play 1, 9, 3, 5, 7. So they put that 1, 9, 3, which we know the 9 is really just the 2. So they have the 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 all played right next to each other. And again, all that does is add more kind of grit to the chord, gives it more flavor, it gives it a little bit of dissonance so it's not so happy, but it still fits the chord progression that is being played. But again, back to what we do as single note players when we're playing them. There are a couple options. If they're not altered, you can just kind of ignore it because it's already in the scale that we are playing. If you have a C major 7, add 9, add the 9th, chances are we're already going to add that 9th anyway. So we don't really need to do anything to the scale that we're playing. However, the 9th, which is really the 2nd, is a note that we normally wouldn't just sit on. We would use it as a go-between note because it's not a chord tone. When you have it in the actual chord, you can land on that note and hold it, and it's going to sound way stronger because it's already in the chord. Another thing that you can do is if you see for example, C7 or a C7 add 9 or a C9, which are the same thing, you can play a lick that goes up to the ninth. That would sound something like this. I just started my lick with 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9. And again, even if it wasn't a ninth chord, that is a lick as a saxophone player that we might play anyway. So when they add the unaltered extensions, in other words, just the number 9, 11, or 13, you can bring out that chord tone, or you can just play your regular scale from the regular chord and everything is still gonna fit. Now, when it's altered, you have to alter your scale to fit whatever the alteration is. So for example, if it was C7 flat 9, you have to bring the ninth down by half a step, or your second down by half a step, so that the scale will sound correct. If you don't play the flat 9, it'll sound like you're playing wrong notes. But for just a regular extension, a 9, 11, or 13 that is not altered, you can bring that note out, you can ignore that note, you can say, oh, that extra note, that 9th, 11th, or 13th, is for the keyboard player or guitar player to add a little extra flavor to the chord. And when I'm soloing, when I hit that note, when I hit that number, I can bring that note out, or I can use that as a turnaround note or a goal note, or I can just play through it like I normally would if it was a regular chord. So that is what chord extensions are, and that is how single note players play them, especially in the beginning. Now, obviously, as you get more advanced in your playing, you're gonna bring those extensions out more in your solos anyway. But again, when you see that 9 in a chord, all that is telling you is that the chord player is gonna add that extra third on the end of the regular chord. So they're gonna go up an extra third. So they're gonna go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, or they might put the 9 in the middle. 1, 9, 3, 5, 7, or some other inversion of the chord. So how should you practice chord extensions? It's really easy. Just play your major scale in thirds. So you start on the 1 and you play all the way up until you hit a 1 again. That is a great way to practice your chords in general, and especially understanding and figuring out your extended chords, being able to figure out what that 9th, 11th, and 13th is very quickly by playing your major scale as if it's all thirds. And that is your intro to extended chords. All of those extra numbers, the 9, 11, 13, are telling you is what flavor to put on your regular chord. As horn players, as single note players, we can bring those notes out. We can go up and turn around on those notes. When we're soloing, we can bring those notes out more, or we can just play in the key of the regular chord as long as the extension is not altered. When the extension is altered, if it's got a flat 9 or a sharp 11, we have to pay attention to whatever that is. So if it's a flat 9, we bring the 9th down by a half a step. If it's a sharp 11, we bring the 11th up by a half a step. So we have to really incorporate that into our soloing. But if it's just a regular extension, a 9, 11, or a 13, you can bring those chord tones out, or you can just play your regular scale. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. I hope you now understand what a chord extension is, and I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, and give me a thumbs up. Thanks a lot.